about, or tell me, thoughts from today. What are some takeaways that would be helpful for us to remember and to, well, takeaways for today, anyway. What kind of things came up for anyone that you feel is important to share at this point?
I've been trying to tell you this, but I know we got really busy when you and Mark were discussing. I do have a problem when patients get very angry and they start yelling and screaming at your face. And the best approach that I've taken is, I said, excuse me, I need to walk away. And I walk away, and of course I run to Janice, and then from then she, takes over. But there are some circumstances where it's really hard to just stay there and listen and prompt the question when you have circumstances that just escalate to a point that is just by means unable to discuss.
I'm going to write it down. I have a question though. When that happens, do you have a space, a place where you can take it privately?
I go to my office, but then...
No, I'm sorry. Let me rephrase. That you could say to the person, I'm assuming it's a family member, you say, I want to hear more, let me take you, where you can get it out of the floor, out of the room, and take it to a quiet space that's neutral for them, and then really listen and take notes.
No.
That I would highly recommend doing that, because that is also part of listening, but also remember, it's not just that family member and that patient, it's the impression and the, you're on stage, everybody's watching. So whenever anyone is irate, and they have whether we think so or not, they have a reason to be irate. You did nothing, it's just they're upset. So it's good to get them out of a situation, away, because that is never going to be good for the patient or any of the other patients or family members to hear, to see. So I would highly recommend, just as a first step, get them out and take them to, I know there's a room up there on the 4th floor, it's quiet, and let them... Huh?
No, it's locked.
Oh,
You have a key.
Okay.
You have a key.
Well, then that's even, actually, that even shows...
A12 is the key.
Yeah, you can, yeah. I think that there's place, it's worth the doing. And I highly recommend getting out a pad of paper before they even open their mouth and say to them, I want to make sure, if I'm going to write notes as needed, because I really want to make sure I understand what's concerning you. And
So I just have one issue with that.
Okay.
And sometimes we run into people that are so angry, you don't want to go into a room with them. So what I would do in that situation is have someone like me come with you.
Absolutely, that's a good point. That's a great point. But still do that.
Because sometimes people just get they get off on their anger, and just love the idea of being in a room and being able to beat you up. And
It's not a nursing issue, it's an administrative issue regarding chemotherapy treatment or something to that effect. I can remember, and the man was just really irate and yelling and screaming. And the doctor was present, but she didn't do anything until I approached the doctor and said, we need your support. You cannot just leave me this alone.
Right.
And so later on she came and discussed with her. But in moments like that, I just felt that, what was it for me to say at that point when this man was literally yelling? And I just said, okay, somehow it isn't enough to say, I'm just going to stay.
wouldn't it be appropriate in that situation to just say, how about if I come back in about 5 minutes and we'll talk some more about this? Or
It could be, it might be, but it may not be. It might be, and that's why I think I like what you said, actually, that's a great point. I still would say something to the degree of, off the top of my head, I'm very sorry that you're upset. I want to really listen to what you have to say. Let me call my director, and we're going to take you somewhere private so we can really listen to what your concerns are.
That's a good way to say
And I go
it.
from there. And then, if you need more support, which you probably will, then it's a team, it's a group, and say, you know what, I thank you for sharing. Let me get so-and-so on this as well, or whatever that But I really do think that 1-2 step is important. I can't stress that enough. Because that, just like if someone's upset and irate, and they themselves get into this, it almost feeds on itself. Have you ever been in line and somebody complains in line because the line's too long, and then the next person, and then it's like a chain reaction, and it's like fire. And you don't want to start that. It easily happens. And
Yeah.
the other thing too is that environment is for healing. So that person needs healing too. Even though they're yelling, they're showing it very oddly, but not really in that setting, depending on the situation. But it's respectful to them, and it's respectful to you, and to everyone else in that, to get them, move them out.
Well, that's something we're going to
but I'm-
have to practice.
Yes, so I
'Cause
put that
I'm
here.
not always the very best at that either.
Well,
I get
no
rather
one's born
defensive.
knowing how great to be at that.
Yeah.
And it's
I
all
tend to get
about
defensive in
practice.
situations like that. And I don't get into an argument with someone, but I have a difficult time at times when someone's angry saying, "I'm very sorry," and saying that genuinely, "I'm very sorry," because I might not really be sorry. I might be just getting really angry at that person.
Yeah,
Helen?
and I came to the post over here to say, you guys really do have maybe even more support than you realize.
That's right.
And maybe it's a chain of support, like your charge nurse and then Janice and Mara, if someone's going to make a formal grievance. But in the situation that you're describing, Janice, and I can see where you're being pulled and your emotions are being pulled.
Right.
Call me. So we can start
You have
with
support.
it. You have support, and I'm
Right.
a little removed from it.
Yeah.
I still defend you guys. But you know what I mean? I might be able to have it come out
Sure.
of a different emotion. Or anybody else that you would call. But
Yeah.
we'll all
Helen? Oh, hold on.
So I recently had a situation where it was a family member, but he was also one of our doctors. And he was very irate. Luckily, I think, for him, I was sitting down already. And I had been told in a review that when I stand and I'm, that it's very intimidating. So I stayed sitting, I listened to what he said. He did not want me to take care of his mother again, so I just said, okay, that's fine. I didn't apologize. Because sometimes I think that when you apologize, it just kind of gives them more reason to just keep lashing out at you. Not that I have a problem apologizing when I have to,
Sure.
but I just stayed seating, and I didn't realize I did this, but Laura happened to be there, and she said that he was so in my face that she saw me push away from the desk, but I stayed in my chair because I know that I didn't want to kind of build on that, yeah. And so after he kind of removed himself from the situation, I called the charge nurse and I asked them to come talk to him. And luckily, I was off for about 3 or 4 days, and he had time to talk to charge nurse, to Janice, kind of cool off, and he actually approached me and apologized.
I was going to say.
In a way, he kind of apologized to me, but at the same time, he says to me, we all make mistakes. But I was like, that's fine, and because I still have to work with him, and he, at the time, was the son of a patient that I was taking care of. So I didn't want to,
Can I just say something? And I appreciate you sharing that story because it's a really good example of how difficult it is to do what you do. And I'm not talking about the clinical part. The people part, the human part. It is very difficult, extremely difficult, especially in the situation that you all find yourselves in every day. And there is, I wish I could each give you, and I couldn't, I can give you a lapel pin, but I couldn't give you a magic pill to make it simple and an answer for everything, because everyone's different. But what I took from that, Helen, is that he did cool down, he did understand. So whatever you did, how you handled that situation, and it's never going to be the same in every situation, but how you handled it, you did listen to him, you did what he asked, and he did apologize. Take an apology for what it is. Everyone apologizes differently. Everyone listens a little differently. He did. Don't expect someone to apologize the way you want it. It's kind of like the love thing, you know? Everyone gives love a little differently. I like to cook, I like to bake. So if you get a cake from me, it's because I love you. Get cookies, it's I love you. But he did. He was apologizing in his own way. So how you followed Lee, whether you realized it or not. Because an apology doesn't necessarily have to be verbally shared either. I mean, but you listened. You handled that situation very well. Or he would not have come back after that, after he cooled down. He would have been more upset afterwards. Would you agree, Mark, in some ways? Yeah. So, good example.
It was a challenge.
And it'll happen again. I mean, challenges,
Oh, yeah.
it's daily. It's happening right now somewhere.
Especially with all of us here.
Well, I didn't mean necessarily on the Caritas, I just meant in the world.
I remember it was a weekend and I can't remember the exact circumstance, but I was filling in for a charge and, we had a patient that was really like being verbally abusive, to one of our young good nurses, and you could just tell she felt completely defeated, and I wanted to defend her, yet, it was an interesting scenario for me to be in, and I'm always trying to improve on that. Like, this is great information. But is it ever appropriate, like, I think I did follow the lead, but I just said, he was really like pointy words and this and that, and I said, and I just kind of said, kind of diffuse, I'd like to have a conversation about this and let's have a conversation about it, kind of, let's use a different tone though, so we can actually come to a solution. Because she was, she actually left the room because he kept going like this, which was totally fine. And, but just, where's the fine line so they're not abusive to us, and how can we rein that in? From that perspective, we did find a solution in the long run and he felt listened to, but it was quite escalated there, what I walked into. So.
Well, I have a question, and I know I want you to answer that part too. But my question is, what was the situation? He was a family member, I'm assuming, or was he the patient? He was the patient.
Yeah,
okay.
And it was one of those that they just didn't feel like they were. There was other root sources probably, but
And I don't need all the
didn't want
details.
that patient is a nurse because they didn't think they were
Capable or...
making correct decisions and meeting their needs, where this is very compassionate, heart on your sleeve kind of nurse, and I know she cared for her patient. And it was out of character of them, so I figured he was in pain or he had some other underlying issue going on.
Well, you're getting to what I was wondering, and it goes back to also what Mark was reviewing when we were doing the managing expectations.
Some time ago, but yeah.
Well, and it could be patient X. I mean, any patient that could happen to any, and thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Ask yourself, and you won't know 100%, but the why. Why are they acting that way? Why is someone that upset at this poor nurse? And generally speaking, it goes back to what you already identified: vulnerable, pain, out of control. So how you're saying you did diffuse the situation. You listened. You took him away from the situation, or you took yourself away. You took the nurse away, but you diffused the situation.
Right.
And you listened.
Yeah.
Then that's part of this. You did good. I recommend that. I don't know though. Now I know you had a second part though. What was the solution? The
I
key.
just was trying to think, where do we determine the fine line of listening, but yet not letting ourselves be abused, and
Well, I think
Well,
there is no
there-
fine line.
it's like, how can we rein that in and stand up for ourselves? And, I forgot about the situation, because actually it was probably a couple of years ago, or 2 years ago, but it was, it brought it back to my mind thinking.
I think that's where a lot of us end up getting caught, is thinking that there's going to be a right or wrong answer or some way to solve the issue. And I think most of the time in situations like that, we're not going to solve it. We're not going to come out on top. We're not going to come out letting this person know that he can't push me around like that. We can't bring that stuff into that relationship.
He was like, it was blowing up from something else.
You know, if it,
Yeah.
exactly, if it becomes a situation that is truly escalating and you're feeling that somebody is unsafe, then you call security.
Oh, yeah, it wasn't.
Or you call the
it wasn't
police.
there. It was just exaggerating something unrealistic. So I just said, I heard out his circumstance, and then I said, well, I'll speak to, I'll speak to the nurse about it. He felt listened to, and then we
That's
just, between the nurse, I knew she was hurt, so we just worked to find the best solution to handle it, and it worked out fine.
Anna?
I just wanted to add one little addition to it, that we did have a Caritas to that situation when nurse or CNA were personally deeply hurt and offended by patients' actions. And my advice is usually the same, that it's not personal. They did not target you. Any CNA or any nurse on your
Right.
place would be abused the same because that's what the situation was. And usually when I have difficult patients who are, making fun of my accent, being mean, being disrespectful, never personal. And I sometimes can say, I'm sorry you feel this way, let me try to do that.
Yeah.
So by the end of shift, if I have this kind of morning, everybody deeply apologizes.
Right.
I never had a patient not apologize. They said, I'm sorry I was mean to you earlier. And
Yep.
I said, it's not personal. You are upset.
Thank you, Anna.
They are so
That
gracious
happens
for
often.
this kind of generosity.
Yep. And it is generous of your spirit.
I think that is a good indicator that you are doing everything as right as you can when they do apologize at the end or the next day or the next hour, the next minute. And as personal as it is and as heartfelt as we all feel, because we do, and we were talking about that all day today, it isn't personal when they lash out. It isn't. And I think you took the words out of my mouth, and I'm really glad that you have that centeredness, because it's a difficult situation. It's a difficult gig that you all have.
It is.
It is, to put it bluntly. And, go ahead.
I just want to get back to the thing that I was bringing up in the beginning, which was all the issues that we talked about today, and particularly the concept of being a compassionate care unit. And Colleen had asked me, is this a different direction with the term compassionate care unit? And no, it's not a different direction. I don't think that there are many units that would be able to even take on the challenge of being what we could consider a compassionate care unit. We're already in that direction. We're already doing that. But how do we get better at that? How do we grow and continue to develop and maintain that? Does anybody have any suggestions for how we can continue that?
Go ahead.
I had mentioned to Janice on the break, I would be interested in finding out, to compare what our patients think now, as far as versus what Margaret said earlier, that she didn't feel some connections maybe, or the lack of eye contact, and that's when we were doing paper charting. I would like to find out what our patients feel now that we're doing electronic charting. Because when we're in the room, we're supposed to be doing the charting in the room, and you've got your back turned towards the patient so many times, you're not giving them, I don't feel 100% of my time when I'm there with them. The eye contact is minimal unless you're doing this, constantly. I would like to find out on admission and in the morning when we round on them, what's your expectation for today or for your hospital stay? And then revisit it, whether it's at the end of the day or, 48 hours later, and include that to see if we're meeting it.
Yeah.
And see if maybe with us doing electronic charting, how similar or how different it compares to what Margaret felt when we were doing the paper charting.
And do you think that would be because you're spending more time in the, would it be because you're spending more time in the room now, even though you're sounding like you feel kind of isolated because you're at the WOW doing your charting? Does the patient feel that, at least the patient sees you and knows what you're doing as opposed to sitting at the desk doing your charting? They might think you're playing on the internet. Is that what you're saying?
No, I just think when I go in the room, I want to talk to the patient. I don't want to ask them their 20 questions or, I mean, let me ask them the 20 questions, but I'm going to sit down with them, ask them the questions, give them the eye contact. If my phone goes off, it's excuse me, unless it's an emergency, then I don't leave the room. And then do my assessment, and then I can go out and chart, let them know we're going to be doing the hourly rounding, addressing the 4 Ps, giving them that time that they need to start the day, the expectations. And then it's like, I feel like, okay, I've already set up my connection, I'm establishing the trusting relationship, the communication is there. But if I go in and just start automatically going into the computer with not giving them all that information or giving it to them piece by piece, I don't feel like I'm really giving them the attention that they're expecting on the Caritas unit.
Why wouldn't you be able to do what you just described, and then rather than going out to the desk to do your charting, stand there and do your charting and say, now what was it you said, da-da-da-da-da?
It just doesn't...
Doesn't flow?
Feels
Your
like-
back's towards them,
Yeah.
your sides to...
Why can't you turn the computer that way?
You can, but your focus is on the computer, it's
Yeah.
not on the patient.
Just going back to what you shared, what you brought up about the upset patient, one thing I wrote down here because I was thinking about this, I think that maybe part of us thinks that if we're doing everything right, then nobody's going to yell at me. Right? I mean, because a lot of times we think that, we may not even logically or consciously think that. But I think a lot of times we assume that. And we know that that's not the case. But I share that because I can't stress it enough. If you get an apology later on, however that apology comes, just know, have some reassurance that you did do things right. You know, that you, in the moment, you did do it the best you could. There's no perfect. But I got to be honest, I have been irate and upset and yelled at people. I hate to say that, I know, I have.
It's real.
Yeah.
No way.
And later on, I have apologized, and I feel so bad and ashamed, but I really gave them a run for their money and probably caught people off guard because I was so upset. And it was a difficult, in those situations, yes, I'm upset at the situation. I'm not necessarily upset at the person, sometimes I am. But really more of it is what you said, there's baggage I'm bringing. There's a lot of baggage, or some little baggage, but, you know, they may never have been able to stop me from being angry in that moment. But how they handle it, how you handle the situation, if you get defensive, it's not going to make it a better situation. That's why I think it's better not to say, I need to leave my...
true.
We're just like a parent is always being watched. You're always being watched. So how you handle it, and I think Anna really summed it up well, we have to not take it personal, but people will get angry at times and it may not have anything to do with you.
And I have one more thing I want to ask. How do you answer the patients that say, well, you know, I pay enough for this room, I want to get my money's worth? I've heard that in the past month 3 times. And, well, what are you expecting from your $750? Yeah, no, I didn't say that.
Is there a way to say that?
That's, you know, I don't know what to say.
Because I think that is the right question. It just depends on
What's your
the way that you say that.
Exactly, that I was just going to say.
And in that same tone that they're delivering, it's almost like jesting, isn't it? You know, I want to get my money's worth. And maybe you could find a way. You got to use what works for you. So if it doesn't work for you, you don't lose this approach. But well, I'd like to make sure you get your money's worth, or I could make that happen. But
that's important to me too.
But that's important to me too, or that would be great. Kind of in that same spirited, but then you get, but tell me what that is. What does that look, you know, tell me what it is so that I can make sure you get every penny's worth, not sarcastically. It could come across the wrong way, right? No, but I want, that's tones, that's how you deliver it, you know? Watch, look, I'm gonna say all the right things and I've got great eye contact. Welcome to Caritas, can I help you?
I hear about that too.
Right? So it's all 3. It's how you look and what you, but I want that too.
Yeah.
What? How can I help you get that value?
When your question, them approaching you and saying, what am I paying?
Yeah.
I think that also stems from when they first were introduced to Caritas. Now, I don't know if they've come from ER, because the concept
Yeah.
is that you are a 1 to 2, and
Totally.
and
Yeah.
that then makes it difficult for you, because I've heard them say, well, I thought this was a 1-to-1. And
Yes.
I honestly tell them, it's not necessarily a 1-to-1 here. I am honest, and I tell them, the nurses here work very hard. They can go up to 5 patients, but they're great nurses, and they're here to help you. Now, you're giggling, but it's true. No, you have to, what is it? Manage up.
That's right.
Manage up.
Each other. And that's where I have to say, that's what you're paying for, is the nurses here, the things you get, and, if there's any needs you have several people to go to. There's a charge nurse number, we have our director.
Concierge.
But we're here
right?
to help you. Because it's really hard when I hear it's a 1 to 2, or I get a doctor saying, are you still a 1 to 2 up there? I have a patient who wants it, can you give them a pamphlet? And when the patient
Dr.
comes
Orenberg
up,
was still
and I
like-
ask them, what are your needs? It's not that I'm trying to
Because we can't
divert
put it in
them from
writing.
Caritas, but their needs were not Caritas needs. Their need was somebody to sit with their family member. And I said, you are better off spending your money, because you're not going to get the 1-to-1 care, to get somebody to sit with your family member, if that's what you're truly looking for. And it's okay to say that. I mean, I love the Caritas unit, the potential is there, but we do have our limitations, and we have to be able to say that.
The other thing too that will help with the consistency is if you find one thing. One thing you said that I really love was about you're going to get the finest care, the best nurses, the best staff. Okay, let's just take that as an example.
Well, we don't say that though, because the whole hospital provides that level of care.
Right,
You're going to
but
get that
whatever
on the
that
oncology
is, I'm
unit.
just using that as an example,
Okay.
but whatever that tidbit is, when somebody asks you about the value of Caritas and why they're spending the additional amount for that, whatever that response is, whatever, I know you were identifying it earlier when Mark and I came in, everyone needs to have that readily available. It should be a consistent message and drilled in, because that's part of the brand you're trying to create.
Right.
And it needs to be felt, not just by one person, but really shared and felt by everybody, and really committed, whatever that is. And I was using that because I like that, but I understand what you're saying. But that was just an example. It just needs to be consistently shared too, from beginning to end. From the
Helen?
sale to the end.
I think by asking patients when they come in what their expectations are, I don't think we do that now.
We don't do that.
I think that would really help. I mean,
Yeah.
everybody asks all the patients every shift, like
Yeah.
you mentioned, I think.
We do need
you
to
can
do
say,
that.
well, we can do as much as we can within the limitations of, what we can do in a hospital setting.
What if, instead on the whiteboard, instead of saying goals, I think there's
Yeah.
goals, say expectations, or what are your expectations?
Well, I like what Kelly was saying is asking the patient, or what was on the whiteboard, what's important to you?
Yeah, that's a good statement.
And I don't think I've ever asked a patient that.
Yeah.
And when Margaret was given her presentation, I know I've heard and I've used, first impressions, but I don't think I've ever thought of it in a nursing point of view. So those are the two things that kind of stuck with me today. I mean, there was a lot, but those are the two things that I think I want to start introducing into my practice. Asking them what's important. I mean, I think I ask it in a different way.
Yeah.
But using those specific words, I think is very powerful for them.
I think too, one of the things is to kick it up a notch is that, because we do get a lot of the comfort care on our side, I think that question then needs to be rerouted to the family that's at the bedside, when the patient can no
Oh, yeah,
longer see.
absolutely.
You need to also, because you're not just, with cancer or dying
Yeah.
patients, you're not just treating the disease, it's the whole person, and it's everyone else that's in the room at that time. So we need to also find out what those needs and those goals and expectations are.
Thank you, everybody, very, very much for today.